Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So my name is Mr. Mrrboss and this is our fifth tutorial in this series. So I hope guys you are learning something from my videos. I would really appreciate it if you guys can give me feedback on how I can better my videos or on how I can basically improve them. If you feel like there's something that I need to add or something that I need to subtract, then you basically need to include that in the comment section. I would love to make these videos to your best liking so that you learn or get the most out of them. All right, so in this video, I know in the previous video when I was concluding, I said that I was going to be talking about variables, but I feel like I can't talk about variables before I talk about data types. So when you are writing variables or when you are initializing variables, then basically you need to include the data type. So I feel like if I can just jump into variables without actually touching on data types, it's going to be a very big disadvantage because you're not going to understand exactly where I'm going to be getting certain things. So I'm going to touch on the data types first, and then after touching on the data types in the next video, I'm going to be touching on variables. And I feel like it's going to be much better to initialize everything when you know exactly the types of data types that we have or the different types of data types that we have. All right, so we have the different types of data types that we have are, we have integers, and then we have Boolean, and then we have char, and then we have string, and then we have float, and then we have double. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain each and every one of those in detail. So basically here, I think you can see when we're writing this function, the first thing that we did, we wrote int. This int basically mean integer. So what we're going to do is let's just erase all this. Let's just erase all this. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to use different, I'm going to explain different types of data types in detail. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the int, which basically stands for integer, right? So integer, I think we both know that an integer is a value that does not have a remainder, or it has a remainder of 0. Like for instance, an integer is a whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 100, 1,000, that's an integer. Okay, so every time when you're talking about integers, you need to make sure that you are talking about values that do not have remainders. Those can only be integers. The moment you start including values with remainders and stuff like that, then you're not talking about integers at all. So that is the first thing that I want to talk about. So basically, that's all in terms of an integer. And then moving on to the data type bool. Bool stands for Boolean. Boolean is basically a true or false type of data type. So basically, in most cases, when you're coding, in some cases, we want it to return a 0 representing false, we want it to return 1 representing true, or want it to return a true representing that something is correct, or return a false representing that something is not true. So basically, when you're dealing with the data type Boolean, you're basically dealing with true or false, those two different things, true or false. All right, so that's bool, which is basically stands for Boolean info. And then the third type of data type that I'm going to talk about is char. Char basically stands for character. So when we talk about characters, for instance, when you are initializing a char type of variable, anything of that sort, then you basically need to write, like, let's say, for instance, you want to write a character char, then let's give it a name. I don't know, we can say char x is equals to. So basically, when you write this char x character x, you basically need to put single inverted commas and then write your character inside those inverted commas. So I think I don't need to basically explain what a character is, because a character can be anything, A, B, C, D, whatever the case might be, it is a character. However, you need to make sure that when you write a character, it is placed inside these single inverted commas. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense. If you say x is equals to c, it's not going to make sense because x is not equals to c. However, the moment that you place this c inside the open and close singular inverted commas, I don't know if that's what they're called, then in that case, you're implying that the c is a character of which you are actually equating to x. So that is char for you. Now, after char, the second type of data type or or rather the fourth type of data type that I'm going to be talking about is a string. A string is statement, a line of statement, a statement basically. Like for instance, I'm gonna go to the shops, or Mrrboss, my name is Mrrboss, or hello world. Hello world is a string. So for instance, if you want to write a string, you can have something like string x, and then equate it, and then put open inverted commas, and then say I am Mrrboss. That is a string. String basically means that it's a statement that uh, you're talking about. All right, so of course I'm gonna go deeper when I'm gonna write much more meaningful code, and also when I talk about variables, of course I'm gonna go deeper and help you guys understand all these things using application, and also instead of just giving you a bunch of information that you possibly might not understand. So the first type of data type, the fifth type of data type that I'm going to talk about is a float. So a float, remember what I said about integers. Integers deals with whole numbers. It doesn't deal with decimal numbers. So when you're dealing with decimal numbers, you basically need to deal with floats. So a float allows you to output a decimal number. Like for instance, I can say float x is equals to 0.23. That is, this over here is a decimal number. I can say 1.23. This over here is a decimal number. However, you cannot assign 1.23 to an integer. You need to make sure that it's a float in order for it to make sense. All right, so that is it in terms of floats. Basically, it basically means that when you're dealing with a float, you're dealing with a decimal number. Now, the sixth type of data, the sixth data type is a double. A double is basically a float that has double the amount of storage that a float has. I don't know if that makes sense. So a float is going to have it's going to be a 4-bit. Now, a double is going to have something like an 8-bit. So when you're dealing with a double and a float, you just need to know that the difference between the two is the amount of space in which each of those types of data types have. For instance, a float has half the amount of space that the double data type has. So meaning that if you're going to be working with decimal numbers, you just need to know, okay, fine. If I'm dealing with a very big decimal number, then I need to use a double. If I'm dealing with a small decimal number, then by all means, I need to use a float, because a double and a float both deal with decimal numbers, and an integer deals with whole numbers. A char deals with characters, like for instance, 8, but in singular inverted commas. A string deals with, it's a string of it's a sentence basically, which is closed by open and closing inverted commas, like for instance, hello world, like for instance, I am Mrrboss. And then we have bool, which stands for boolean. Boolean, we're only talking about the true or false statements. So when you're writing a code, like for instance, sometimes you're going to need your code to output true if the statement is true, or output a false if the statement is false. So that is basically it, guys, in terms of data types. If you feel like you didn't understand what I said, then I would advise you to rewatch this video. And then if you still don't understand what I said, then you can simply come back to the comment section. You can send your request. You can literally send out your questions, and I'm sure that people will be willing to help, including myself. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the sixth tutorial, where I'm going to be talking about variables and how you can initialize and assign and apply, use variables to basically write something cool.